Welcome to Age of Aquarius, Soul Activation Temple. Yeah, through soul activations, guided meditations, and crystalline codes, we return to who we truly are, which is light in form. You are here because your soul is ready. So welcome home. If the seal represents completeness that will never be revisited again, it then becomes a time to finish what can no longer sustain. It is a powerful stabilizer for closure of repairs that have been installed into our energy field. And the empath, having gone through an initiation cycle to become the sovereign empath, needs to be sure that healing has been completed before the seal can be activated. And so, pattern recognition and self regulation becomes a primary energetic signature as we journey towards rapid shifts of higher self awareness. It then becomes extremely important to translate how the nervous system and consciousness actually function and its relation. A seal that will never be revisited again is not just closure, it is the completion of a pattern loop. From a pattern recognition perspective, it relates to any unresolved wound, repair, or adaptation that lives as a recurring pattern. The psyche and nervous system revisits patterns until safety is restored, coherence is achieved, or the system no longer needs the adaptation. If a seal is closed too early, the pattern does not disappear. It goes underground, so to speak, and resurfaces as emotional reactivity, as somatic symptoms, as relational repetition, as energetic leakage or exhaustion. And so true sealing only occurs after pattern recognition has fully matured. For the sovereign empath, pattern recognition is the gatekeeper to sealing. Healing is not complete when the story makes sense intellectually, or when forgiveness is declared, or even when insight has occurred. Healing is only complete when the body no longer mobilizes around the trigger, when the nervous system returns to baseline without effort, when compassion exists without collapse or overgiving, and when the pattern no longer predicts future behavior. In other words, the pattern dissolves when it no longer recruits energy. And so, pattern recognition allows us to say, this no longer runs me. This no longer asks for repair. This no longer defines my orientation to others. That is the moment a seal becomes stable rather than repressive. Self regulation becomes the proof that the cycle has completed. Self regulation is not preparation for sealing, it is the evidence that sealing is appropriate. A regulated system demonstrates flexible emotional range, choice rather than reflexive action, responsiveness instead of reactivity, as well as having boundaries without guilt or the need to shut down. For the sovereign empath specifically, this means that they can witness suffering without absorbing it. They can offer care without abandoning themselves. They can say no without justification, and they can be present without rescuing. If any of those are still unstable, the seal would function as control rather than sovereignty. So self regulation answers the question: is this pattern truly integrated or merely managed? The initiation cycle from the adaptive self to the sovereign empath follows a very archetypal arc where the empath was immersed in absorption, over repairing, and loss of self. They were saturated in repeating patterns of the same dynamics until they became unmistakable. As they healed, they started recognizing patterns and seeing the structure instead of the story. As they developed self regulation mastery, they learned to stabilize without suppression or bypass. And through becoming sovereign, their choices replaced compulsion. The seal activates when the pattern is no longer available to consciousness. The seal is not an act of will, and instead it is a natural consequence of integration. The seal stabilizes the energy field, and once the seal is closed correctly, the nervous system no longer scans for the old threat. The energy field no longer allocates resources to repair, and identity reorganizes around presence instead of vigilance. This is why it feels like finality, like quiet power, like non dramatic certainty, and an absence of pull rather than resistance. Nothing needs to be defended in this regard because nothing is unfinished. Everything in life, whether it is broken, unpleasant, or underway, it is all part of a greater divine plan. And so the key message here is that pattern recognition tells you what must be completed. Self regulation proves that it has been completed. And the seal simply acknowledges that reality. Closure is not something we decide, it is something the nervous system confirms. And so, to follow is the seal of completion activation. It is a nervous system based closure practice. This is an invitation to gently close your eyes, to place your feet on the floor, to exhale slowly as you relax your body. Bring your attention into your chest and belly. This is not an act of force. Nothing will be closed that is not ready. The body leads, the mind follows. Now, bring to mind a repeating emotional cycle. Not the story, but the felt sense. Notice here if the body braces, tightens, or softens. It is key to note that when the body still feels like it is preparing, it means that the pattern is still active. As you softly slow your breath, gently orientate yourself to the sounds near you, to the room, to the weight of your body. Allow your body to settle without fixing anything. It is key to note that completion does not require effort. It reveals itself in ease. If this pattern no longer asks for energy, if it no longer recruits the body, you may allow it to close. Now visualize a soft closure, like a door settling into its frame. Not locked, but complete. For what is complete does not need guarding. Once again, feel the weight of your body. Feel the rhythm of your breathing. And when you are ready, you may gently open your eyes. So to follow is a self-assessment checklist, and this is gold for anyone that is sensitive or an empath. The invitation here is to answer honestly without judgment. The foundation question is, am I ready to close this cycle? The emotional indicators here would suggest that I can think about this without a surge of emotion, that my compassion is present without urgency, and that there is no pull to explain, to fix, or to justify. The somatic indicators would be that my breath stays steady, my body does not brace or collapse, there is no tightness in my chest, throat or gut. Behavioral indicators should suggest that I do not repeat the same relational dynamic. I no longer anticipate this pattern returning. My choices are not shaped around avoiding it. And the identity indicators suggest that this experience no longer defines who I am. I do not need validation about what happened. And I feel more here in the now than vigilant. And so, in closing, the sovereign question becomes, if this never returned again, would I feel relief or fear? Fear in this regard would indicate that more integration is needed. Relief, on the other hand, would indicate readiness to seal the door to that cycle.